3 characteristics of the archetype, the bitter baby daddy. Hey sis, I really wanted to stay away from this topic. I've got better things concerning women to be writing about or advocating for. That said, with all that's trending on social media about Halle Baily, Umar Johnson's daughter, and I'll even throw in a vintage case of Tyrese Gibson, my pen would not rest. A decade ago, I learned what a bitter baby daddy is firsthand via my first husband, who is now my ex-husband. I have some key ways to identify them via their behaviour, which we can also see in the men mentioned above who are in the public eye and showing these behaviours. At the time of me writing this, what's not being focused on social media and reporting about Umar Johnson et al. Is how we identify and qualify a man as a bitter baby daddy and deal with them according to this, rather than attacking the women who held boundaries. The myth of the bitter baby mama. First, the groundwork must be laid, and women need to wake up to this reality about this stereotype, and men need to own this one truth. There's a common myth in the black diaspora especially that women are bitter baby mamas. They are the ex-partners who act in this manner. It's never men. According to the red pill and manosphere sector of men, they would lead you to believe that this is not a male trait of behaviour. This is also the common narrative for black folk, including black women, because black women have allowed themselves, sadly, to be brainwashed by men, and they are prepared to divorce themselves from women's issues in order to please men or do what they call it, be a pick-me. It's also a running commentary for black men, especially in the red pill and manosphere black sector, that black women, quote unquote, stop their ex-partners from seeing their kids. Then they jump online, like Halle Baily's ex-partner, and start their sympathy pleas to the community to try and engage the more male-identified females who fight for men's causes rather than women's causes, to attack the female partners of the bitter men who simply held a boundary against a man. The myth of the bitter baby mama, regardless of the woman's race, is simply not true and highly unlikely. If we look at the evidence there is that does not support the unlikely outcome of a woman being bitter when a relationship ends, as men like to claim. So who is more likely to say, you've got to go? One thing we don't see from men often, especially in the red pill manosphere arena, if you can bear to listen to them online, is their ability to call on facts, data, research, and things that other people simply can't argue with to support their claims and fabrications about women. In this case, the fabricated idea that women are bitter because men have left them, and women use children or other means as manipulation in this case. They sit on the internet behind microphones creating man-made accounts about women. They can't and don't prove. So let me help out with this lack of evidence problem that we have. What evidence do we have about bitter ex-partners? According to 2 studies, and there's more out there, let me tell you, but one by Margaret Bringin and Douglas Allen called These Boots Are Made for Walking, Why Most Divorce Filers Are Women 2000. In this study, it was found that, and this is a direct quote, women file more than 2/3 of divorce cases in the USA. So this is from the same study, Boots Are Made for Walking, Why Most Divorce Filers Are Women. It was published in American Law and Economics Review, number 4, volume 2, 2002, page 371 to 375. They also found in this same study, or around the same time by the same researchers, that, and this is a direct quote again, indeed, compared to women, relationship status tends to impact men's mental and physical health more positively. This may also at least partly explain why men are less likely to end romantic relationships compared to women. And this is by the same researchers. Based on this one piece of research on one part of the world, we can conclude a lot. Number 1, it's very unlikely for a woman to be bitter or a bitter ex-partner because women are the ones more likely to have dissolved the union or relationship. Number 2, men are therefore more likely to be the bitter ex-partner as they are the ones being broken up with more often and at higher rates than men breaking up with women. Men are more likely to be the ones to hold on to animosity, or malice after a relationship ends, therefore, logically. The third thing, as if we didn't know this already as women, it appears that men benefit more from women in relationships and unions. They are the ones less likely to leave due to this. So when they are told to leave, what happens? It's more plausible to believe that they, meaning men, are more likely to become bitter than women because they, meaning men, lose something that benefits them. A second study by Michael Rosenfield, which is called Who Wants the Breakup? Gender and Breakup in Heterosexual Couples, 2017. Now, this study confirmed that approximately 69% of all divorces were initiated by women. They also go on to cite the main reasons they found why women initiate a separation. So from the study, this is a direct citation. They have said sensitivity to relationship issues, marriage seen as a gendered institution, power differentials within the relationship. And this can be found in that same study by M. Rosenfield, Who Wants the Breakup? Gender and Breakup in Heterosexual Couples, 2017, pages 4 to 7. So with the above facts established and confirmed by studies, data, research, and the hard stuff that the red pill and the manosphere men in general can't really sit behind microphones and weaponize against women, when asking the question, who is more likely to be bitter after a breakup and therefore cause problems for the ex-partner, the more likely bitter ex-partner is probably a man, not a woman. So now we've got that established, let's take a look. How do bitter baby daddies actually show up? Firstly, using the child or children to maintain access to you or a woman. So let's run it from the top, using me as an example before we look at the men in the public eye that I cited earlier. A decade ago, one Wednesday evening, I calmly took off my diamonds on my left hand. I wondered exactly how much I could get for them at the local pawn shop. Then I looked at my first husband with a feeling of disgust, pity and regret, to put it mildly. I had the ick. I realised that this was the last man like him I was going to date or entertain in my life ever again. And in a calm voice, I told him, you need to be gone by Friday. The second thing I said was, when would you like to see your son? I'm happy to work out a schedule to spend time with him whenever or however you'd like. Guess what this bitter baby daddy turned around and said? And while I was writing this, I did laugh a decade later. And as I read this out to you, I'm actually smiling and laughing again. He turned around and he said to me, I'm not making any arrangements to see him. I'll come over when I want. The second thing he said to me was, and don't be having no one else up in the house around him. Keep in mind, okay, it was my home. I paid the mortgage in my own name. For the purposes of staying on track while I was writing and keeping this pretty PG, I won't give you the joke about what my 32-year-old self actually said to this bitter baby daddy. I was not as calm and even-toned as I am now. The point is, what we see here is a man who is bitter, that he has lost access to something and someone that benefits him by a marriage and living with me. This man wanted to maintain access to it and or impose his bullshit on it too. That would be me and the stability of my home. See this for what it is. Firstly, he was and always did refuse to come to any kind of shared time or co-parenting agreement, not because I was making it hard for him or keeping him away. Why? Looking at the direct quotation from him, it's because he wanted to be able to be free to come and go in my home and in my life. This is what bitter baby daddies do. Secondly, his reasons for not wanting to make a schedule had nothing to do with his son, nothing to do with him or anything else, and everything to do with me. Why? Because in the same breath, he tried to control how I could or did move on with my life, and the threat of another man replacing him in my life, not his son's life. No one was stopping him from seeing his son or from being there for him. Remember, I set a clear boundary with my ex-husband. It was agreed dates and times and no showing up at my doorstep when you want. Take it or leave it. Bitter baby daddies show up with these behaviours when they don't like something, and that something is boundaries. Boundaries set by a woman that benefited him and or they still want access to and or to monitor them with moving on with their life and with life in general. Bitter Baby Daddy case study number 2. Umar Johnson and his demands, let's sit down, you, me and your mum. Umar Johnson, do not ask me how he's managed to do this, but Umar Johnson, who has crowned himself as some kind of king and prime example of an upstanding man in the black community, has a 22-year-old daughter he abandoned, who has made numerous videos claiming to have been trying to contact him and establish a relationship with him and her half-sister, who he also fathered. He's ignored, according to her. His response has been, I've been paying child support since you were in your mum's womb, and secondly, demanding that he gets to speak to the mother. Now, in the description box of this video, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I will put a direct link to his, response to his daughter. You can check it out all there. You may have already seen it before because it's been trending all over the place. So if you can bear to listen to his rant, which is in that video or from what you've seen before, I want you to look at the language he's using in his response and his video and ask yourself, who is he directing his demands at? He's not focused on his daughter or defending his case against whether he has or has not ignored her attempts to contact him. This man is hyper-focused on 1, talking to the mother, 2, having contact and access to the mother, and 3, justifying his absence with child support payments. He's not trying to resolve his daughter's issue of feeling ignored or abandoned. Umar is trying very badly to resolve his own abandonment wound, probably from when the mother left him, and he is trying to scratch the 20-odd year itch he has probably had to have access to the mother, or to control her in some way, or to show up in her life as something important after she's probably shown him he no longer is important. I want you to note something here. These are 2 men of different generations, different nationalities, but they are the same man. If we look at the behaviour of my ex-husband and Umar Johnson, it is the same. Focused on using a child to get to the mother. If we look at this young lady claiming that her father has ignored her, she does not mention, I've not seen in any of her videos, that her mother stopped her from trying to contact him. If we look at her father's response and his focus, who do you think broke off that relationship? Based on what research shows us about who is more likely to walk away that I've already cited above, and Umar's reaction, I hope you've concluded that it was more likely Umar Johnson's ex was the one who broke it off, and this left him somewhat bitter. These men are the bitter ex-partners of women who have discarded them like a dirty tampon down the toilet because they see no use for these men and have decided that they're better off on their own or they want to move on. As a result, the men have displayed identical characteristics that show they are holding on to something, and that something is bitterness and the ex. Side note here, paying child support does not make a present and good father or a present and good parent, especially if the woman or the other partner had to legally enforce payment with the courts. So, characteristics and traits number 1. As I've said, bitter baby daddies. You can identify them because these are the bitter ex-partners of women who have discarded them in some way because they see no use for them and they've decided to move on. As a result, they display these characteristics. They use children to talk to, spy on, have access to their female ex-partner. They are not being focused on the child and seeing or speaking to them based on agreement, but more focused on being able to show up at the ex's location or home or in their life in some way whenever they want. They do this and they try to justify it by saying, this is how I have access to the child, but it's not, it's access to the ex. And lastly, demanding that they, the man, speaks to the mother when a child is trying to reach out to the father. All these characteristics are traits of a bitter baby daddy. Trust me. Bitter baby daddy case study 3. So this is DDG, I believe his name is, his jealousy and sabotage of Halle Baily. If you ask me, the beautiful and talented Halle Baily made the same mistake I made over a decade ago. She was and still is doing well for herself, as I was too, and sadly she decided to entertain a less accomplished man. Now, this is commonly referred to as dating down, which black women sadly have been statistically proven to do. A good read on this I would recommend is Marriage for White People, and this is written by a black male university professor who was brave enough to be very, very honest. We can also consult the statistics around black women having the lowest marriage rate but the highest divorce rate of all races of women, as research by Bowling Green University have cited when couples of the same race, not interracial marriages and couples, were studied. And if you go to the written version of this article, there will be a link in the description box. You can go and find this research there on the article. We've also got the light bill guys that Tyler Perry has been encouraging women to date. They turn out to be jealous, and this is encouragement for women to date down as well. And in the written version of this article, I did write about that. You can find it in the description box. It will all be there. Lastly, we also have the Funderman with 700 USDs a month, as Umar Johnson advocated for at the end of 2024. This is also very bad advice, which I also did write about. I think I also did do a video on this. It will be linked in the description box, or it might pop up here somewhere on the video as I'm talking about it now. So, women who place men in their lives that are not stable or as well off as them in terms of how accomplished they may be by dating them or marrying them, trust me, these men will become jealous. Not only that, they will come out and tell you, and yes, my ex-husband placed this in writing to me, which I still have to this day. Also, as Halle Baily's bitter baby daddy, DDG as he calls himself, did in his song Famous in 2023. And if you have not heard or read the lyrics to this song, there will be a direct link in the written version of this article to a video with the song lyrics, or I will try and place the link to the actual song in the description box. Now, in this song Famous, he openly admitted to being insecure and having a problem with her doing so well. Like, we can't forget that she played the Little Mermaid. This man no one knew about until we saw him appear at Halle's side. He was the struggling rapper. The problem with jealous men is that they always turn out to be bitter baby daddies if they are discarded by a woman, especially one who is doing well for herself, just like Halle is. They will always go on to try and sabotage the woman in some way. Case in point, DGG's latest attempts online to accuse Halle of keeping him from his son, a direct quote from him. From what we can gather at the time of me writing this, number one, both Halle and her son are ill. Number two, we can assume that Halle put a boundary on the access this man has to her or her home, or showing up whenever he wants in some way, and he doesn't like it. The result is to accuse her of keeping a child away from him. Again, using a child to get to the mother. Let's assume Halle and the baby really are ill. Does she not have the right to stay at home and not leave the house to hand over a sick child when she herself is sick also? Does this woman not have the right to enforce her boundary of don't show up at my house whenever you want? Absolutely, especially if or when she and the child are ill. I want you to think about something. Exactly what does DDG gain from seeing a sick child? Nothing, apart from the chance to become ill himself or have contact with a very miserable child who probably just wants to sleep because the child is ill. But of course, there is the chance to be a monitoring spirit in her home. So, I guess that is the main benefit to him. So, characteristics and traits number 2. Remember, jealous men are bitter. No matter what, bitter you earn more, bitter you're more educated, whatever the case may be, this is the starting point. Once you get rid of them, this will continue and they will go on a rampage to try and sabotage you or make you look bad Why? It's those boundaries. The boundaries the woman has probably set, and the fact that he no longer has access to something that benefited him. I mean, look at DDG. I'm not being rude or mean, but who was this man before he was with Halle? From what I understand, he was just someone posting videos on YouTube, and he was someone who aspired to be a rapper. Bit of Baby Daddy, our last one, case study 4. Tyrese's tears, when child support is a weapon to rebel against the end of access to a woman. I've been here too. Men who constantly cry about the need to pay towards the life and upkeep of their child, they laid down and created and or asked for, especially if the woman discarded him, are bitter baby daddies. The actor, singer and bitter baby daddy Tyrese Gibson has been married and divorced twice. Most of us know this. In both cases, he argued about paying child support, and his first marriage only lasted about 10 months. He has also been online in the recent past, throughout 2024, calling on the Court of Appeal, let's just call them other men, and by this I mean other black men, because that's who he's probably trying to appeal to. Can't see him trying to appeal to any other race of man. Either which way, he's been calling on them for help to petition against the need for men to pay child support regardless of the man's race. He just wants to put it to an end. The video I have in the description box here on Tyrese, and you may have seen it yourself over the years because it's been around for years, is showing his literal tears over the need of a responsible father while not having access to a woman any longer. He cites in this particular video where he is crying, "She's keeping me from my child." Girl, look, insert your own eye roll right here. If you do a simple Google search and ask, what is the number one reason men don't want to pay child support? You'll probably come back with the results that indicate it's down to the relationship ending. I'll say no more on this one. It's illogical for a man to be against paying towards his child's well-being and life. He would willingly do it while he had access to the woman, and he was probably doing it while he did have access to the woman. Once he does not, it becomes, and so does the child, become a burden. Often, this is when we see them go out and create more families that they can't pay for, which I also spoke about and referenced in my essay, Why Are They Complaining About Child Support? You Are Your Father's Child. And there will be a direct link to that in the description box, or if you go to the written version of this article, you will find the link to that essay there. In this essay, which demonstrates that historically, men had the legal responsibility to not only financially provide, they also had to oversee things like education and a host of other things, as children were seen as, and this is a direct quote, the property of the father. To directly quote what the laws in place at time thought about who had the responsibility for children. So, characteristics and traits number 3. In the case of the bitter baby daddy, if you or any woman broke off the relationship, following this, if at any point child support, or we call it child maintenance in the UK, is something that the man uses to try to, number 1, control you, number 2, try to piss you off, number 3, keep you in constant contact with him by way of calling, texting, or communicating about when he will make a payment. These are all characteristics of the bitter baby daddy that uses financial assistance for his child as a way to show you he is bitter, that he no longer has access to you anymore. Sadly, this is a lot of men. The bottom line here is this: if you've made it this far and you've listened to this whole video essay, while women in much lower numbers, I would argue, based on what we know from research, can and do present as being bitter about relationships ending, we have to be real. The likelihood of a woman being bitter, based on research presented and the wealth of information that's out there to find on this subject, it does not support this argument by men that women are bitter and use kids as a weapon, purely because it's more likely that women are the dumper, not the dumpy, and have nothing to be bitter about. On the other hand, men sure do have much more to be bitter about if a relationship ends, because they are the dumpy, not the dumper. Add to this, we also know, based on research and even things like life expectancy of married men versus single men, that relationships and marriage benefit men much more so than women. These are 3 ways to nail a bitter baby daddy to the wall in your mind when you're observing his behaviours, and you can be sure that he is bitter. These men focus on you, your life, and your moving on in direct and indirect ways, not the child. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, drop a hashtag bitter baby daddy in the comments. Let me know what you think. And ladies, stay woke to these games. And if you are dating a man who actually displays these kind of behaviours, just know that any story that he has given you about his ex being difficult is a fabricated lie, most likely. And he is the one who is slightly bitter and still invested or monitoring this woman in some way. Much love. I'll catch you in the next one. The Black Woman Essayist.